Coming up on NFL Week 10 as I kind of get back into the swing of things. I've been very horse racing focused for the last couple of weeks. Eric, I talked to you a little bit last week on your show, just a little racing, but we didn't chat on Sunday mornings the last couple of weeks. We didn't chat on Wednesday last week for my podcast. We didn't chat on Friday. Normally, feels like I have not talked to you in years, my friend, but it's just been about a week or so. How are things going on your end?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. Got no complaints. It's been a
So
weird.
you're saying your life is better when you don't talk to me all the time. That's what you're saying, huh? Huh?
Oh, dude, I'm not saying that, dude. I'm just saying.
Okay.
I mean, if you want, we could go into the detail of my doctor's appointment where I felt like an old man. We can go into details of that, but
and
I got no
my son is getting ready to turn 4 in just a few days on the 12th, so I'm feeling a little bit older. But we are getting ready for NFL Week 10. Like always, we'll go through all the games. Eric and I are recording this on Wednesday night, so we'll be able to talk about the Thursday game. If you're in the state of Iowa, you can sign up for a DRF Sportsbook account. That's what we're going to look at right now, DRF Sportsbook, that website. So we'll be kind of using some of those lines as we go game by game by game. And we'll also talk a little bit on a lot of our shows about ParlayPlay.io. It's a site that Eric and I play with. It's fantasy sports, parlays. You can wager on props. You can actually use fantasy points scoring to wager on over or under certain totals, and you can parlay those. There's free contests every week, Eric. There's different ways to play where you can kind of guess the range someone's going to have. Options, lots of options, and we have a perk if folks want to use our promo code NFL Betting Blitz.
Yep, great. It's a great place to play. You can do fantasy points. You can do the whole 9 yards. Over unders, multiple sports. Yeah, it is phenomenal. I absolutely love it.
Okay, Eric, as we get into NFL Week 10,
and payouts are quick too. I mean, like quick, literally, like they're right there.
Good,
yeah,
quick turnarounds. All the places that we promote, we've always played first at those places, checked them out, deposited, withdrawal, make sure everything was good. And then we know that a lot of the folks that are watching and listening to these shows would be interested in these types of places. So take advantage, use that promo code. We'll dive into the Thursday night game, which is Panthers at Bears. Before we do, just some overall thoughts. 47 different starting quarterbacks this year. 51 different players have had to play quarterback at some point, and there have been 47 different starters, which is pretty crazy because we're just halfway through the season. And if you think about some of the games that we had last week, these were some of the matchups, Eric. We had Tyson Bagent versus Derek Carr, Will Levis versus Kenny Pickett, Heineke versus Dobbs ended up being a lot of the game. Brett Ripien versus Jordan Love, Sam Howell versus Mac Jones, Clayton Tune versus Watson, Gardner Minshew versus Bryce Young, Tommy DeVito versus Aiden O'Connell, Baker Mayfield versus Stroud was actually a good game as far as good quarterback play. Zach Wilson was also in the mix. We are seeing a very low level of quarterbacking this year, just a lot of young quarterbacks, a lot of backups, lots of injuries. It's just sort of like, it's like a transition couple of years for the era of quarterbacks that we know. A lot of those veterans who had been around for a long time aren't around now. And they haven't been as many to kind of come and fill in their spots. So we're getting some bad quarterback play in a lot of places. And we'll talk about the story of Josh Dobbs, who comes in, doesn't even know anyone's name. They don't know his cadence. He doesn't know the playbook. The coach is having to tell him the plays through the headset, and they somehow find a way to win. So I think we see scoring down, lots of things, but mainly it starts at the top, Eric. And we have just a lot of quarterbacks out there that aren't like above average or like solid quarterbacks.
Yeah, there's not many franchise quarterbacks when you kind of look about the big scheme of the NFL, what everything's doing. And honestly, I kind of feel that has a lot to do with how bad the youth program has been in America, just kind of developmentally quarterbacks, getting them to read a defense, getting them to process. And then it just becomes the common sense factor. Like, you can't tell me you just take Bryce's young, you don't know he's Bryce Young. Okay. He walks into a room and he walks into a room standing next to CJ Stroud. You can't tell me you'll look at Bryce Young and say, hey, that guy is going to be the top pick in the NFL. We need to remember that just because you're good in college doesn't mean you're going to be good in the NFL. I mean, it's a man's league. And yeah, the level of quarter play is just down all the way down across the board.
Let's get into Panthers at the Bears. We have Bagent will be starting, and the Bears are a 3.5-point favorite in this game over the Panthers. The Bears actually had more total yards, more yards per play, but they had 5 turnovers last week in the game against the Saints. They had 8 penalties for 71 yards. Even with those 5 turnovers, they still were close in the game and had a chance to win the game. Bagent actually played well for a lot of the early part of the game. So they have the ball with the chance to take the lead in the fourth quarter. He's 15 of 19 for 201 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interceptions, 70 yards rushing, but then 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter. Both of them were just bad decisions. And then he gets another chance with 2 minutes left after the Saints missed a field goal. He gets strip sacked. So there were 5 possessions that the Bears had in the fourth quarter, all with the game tied or within 1 score. They had 3 turnovers and 2 3-and-outs. And he's thrown 5 interceptions over the last couple of weeks. So tough to lean on someone who's not necessarily supposed to be a blue chipper or a high quality quarterback. They, are just bad at a lot of the metrics, the Bears, but this Panthers team is not good either. I mean, these are honestly 2 of the worst teams. They might be, we'll see what happens with Arizona with Kyler right now, but these are definitely on the short list of 2 of the worst teams in football. Young was just not good at all last week either. It's not all been his fault this year, Eric, but it's not been his fault, right? He's in a bad situation. CJ Stroud's been in a better situation. We talked about this before the season. We thought CJ would have been set up.
When you put the Panthers playmakers, wide receivers, offensive weapons against the Texans, I think the Panthers have better weapons.
I think for me, it was a little bit more of the offensive line. I'll give them. And that the Texans were able to invest in the offseason more so than the Panthers were. And I think you and I just sort of like the Texans staff more, right, than Frank Reich and what the Panthers have there. So I feel like in that sense, a little bit better offensive line and a better staff to prepare him. I feel like Stroud's kind of just in a better spot there.
I'll be honest, it didn't matter where Bryce Young went.
No, and that's what I was going to say is that, so I'll even give him the benefit of the doubt and say he may not be in that great of a situation, but he's making plays and decisions that he just didn't even make last year too, right? He's not taking the progression and the steps forward even from Alabama. And as you were pointing out, a lot of times these guys that come in from Alabama, USC had some quarterbacks like this too, where you're in a great situation, great line, great receivers, great playmakers, great staff. You don't have to do a whole lot. And then when you get to the NFL, life's a lot different when you have to make the plays instead of just be the driver of that amazing offense, So it's been tough to be impressed with him. They only had, so think about this. They come into the game last week, they're playing the Colts, and he has 3 bad interceptions. Stroud has 1 this year, 1 interception. And Young had 3 in that game. And it's sometimes unfair to just compare the 2 of them, but that's what is going to end up happening. These 2 guys are going to get compared to each other for their whole career because of where they were drafted. And the Panthers had 1 pass play over 11 yards in the game. They had 1 rush of 15 plus yards. This was against the Colts, Eric. The Colts had given up 37 or more points in 3 straight games. They're allowing 28 plus points, which was dead last in the league. The Panthers end up throwing 2 interceptions that are pick sixes. So they ended up scoring 13 offensive points, and they gave up 14 on pick sixes.
Yep.
Right there.
I mean, it was a brutal way to lose a +3 bet, just grinding that one out.
Oh, man.
I look at it like this. I mean, to me, that game against the Saints that the Bears have spoke more about the Saints and just kind of how the Saints were sleepwalking through, just kind of not really interested in it. I'm still trucking along in Circa. I was talking to a couple people that actually used the Saints, and they were legitimately sweating it out. The Bears had 5 turnovers. Obviously, that was like a big factor in the game. But the thing that kind of stuck out to me is when you look at the Panthers game, it was obviously the 2 Bryce Young pick sixes that cost the game, but they limited the Colts offense to only 198 yards.
Yep.
They got less than 4 yards per play. I really feel this Panthers defense is very legit. It's starting to get healthy. And I also just feel there's no world where Tyler Bagent should be laying 3.5 and be able to win by more than a field goal.
Margin. Yeah.
And then the main thing that looks out for me is like, I just have a rule where if it's 2 bad teams, I always take the team with points. And this trend kind of backs it up. A team with a 250 winning percentage that is favored when playing another team with a 250 winning percentage or less, they're 41% ATS. So that means a team that's favored is covering 41% of the time. When they're a home favorite, that drops down to 39%. When they're a 3.5 point favorite or more, it's 38%. I mean, this is just a rule of thumb for me. 2 bad teams, I got to take the team getting points. I really don't know. Another thing is like the Panthers are kind of playing, how can I word this? They don't have their first round pick.
Yeah, so they don't have a reason to tank. They want to get better. They want to improve.
Really doesn't do anything. So.
No. They want to get better. These are good. These are important reps for Young right now for the rest of this year for him. So I'm Panthers or no play in this one. Yeah. Like I got
the Panthers. Like one book got up to 4. It wasn't when it got up to 4. That's what I did.
Yep. I think that's the way you play this thing. I would definitely not be laying this with the Bears. No way, shape, or form. We move to the Colts at the Patriots. So this one is Germany as well, right?
Yep. Overseas in Germany.
Yep. So we have the Patriots. The Colts are a slight favorite in this game. It's on a neutral field. They're a 1.5 point favorite here. In their win last week, we just talked about the Panthers. Well, the Colts gained 2 pick sixes in that game. Gardner Minshew sort of struggled. And like we said, he's a backup. You put him in there and you kind of have expectations on him. He's not someone that you want to be your franchise quarterback. He's just not. He had fumbled 4 times during the past 3 weeks, but this last week, he was just clean. And when it's clean like that and they don't make mistakes and you end up getting a couple pick sixes, well, that's how you win the game from them. So that's just what they need if you're backing the Colts. If they don't get the ball away, they're okay. There was like a really quick stretch in the game. They go on a big drive, 15 plays, they kick a field goal. Then on their next possession, they score a touchdown, and then they kick a field goal, and they get a pick 6. Boom, boom, boom. They're up 20-3 within just a few moments of game time. And that really was the game, as Eric was pointing out. And you look at a lot of the down to down, they didn't need to do much. They only had 1 first half touchdown, a couple of field goals, lots of short throws. They didn't have a 20-yard gain on the day. They only had 2 plays of 15 yards. They really couldn't run the ball either. Taylor only had 2.6 yards per carry on 18 carries. In the second half, they punted 4 times. They only had 4 first downs on 30 yards on 4 non-kneel downs. So, yeah, not even 200 total yards on the day on 57 plays. Now you got the Patriots. I just feel like this is a point where we're talking about this Colts team, Eric, that has a win last week that probably looks a little bit better on paper than it might have. They may have gotten a little bit lucky with those pick sixes that probably don't happen every single week. And then you have the Colts, the Patriots again, who are just a little bit undervalued. They've not been good, but everybody continues to talk about how now they're 2-7. It's their worst start since 2000. They were just 1 of 7 on third down in the second half. Their offense, they scored 17 points and only 3 in the second half last week. Final 5 possessions, they punted 4 times through an interception, and it was really close to field goal range with just about 22 seconds left to go. They gave up 430 total yards to Washington, and they let Washington convert 9 of 17 on third down. It was just a bad game overall for New England. I feel like they're at a low point. The Colts are at a little bit of a high point coming off of a victory last week. I'm on the Patriots side here.
Yeah, I got the Patriots here at +2. I will say this, like I know there's a lot of rumors going around that the Patriots may fire or get rid of uh Belichick. The grass isn't always greener. I mean, we need to remember, granted, people forget how much Philly struggled after they got rid of Andy Reid. It took them a while to get the right coach in the right spot
A
to be
lot of
successful.
teams, man, a lot of years, a lot of coaches. Just think about teams like the Browns or situations where you keep Arizona, you keep getting these guys, and you, like you said, you better make sure you have somebody ready and picked out right now because
You
we've
have the
seen,
guy. I
right?
mean, there's
We've
no
seen a lot of
point.
those Belichick guys go and not do very well either, right? Your boy Patricia McDaniels did not do very well. A lot of them have not done well as head coaches.
And I mean, I'll give the Lions credit, man. Like there was a point where the Lions could have easily got rid of Campbell and they stayed with him. They stayed with the process.
100%.
It's turned out to be pretty good. In terms of this game, one of the big trends that, I look at is a team that starts off with a dog like the Colts did and becomes a favorite. They're only 34% against the number. Colts had, in my eyes, zero business winning that game. Taylor, 47 yards rushing. Colts, 198 yards of total offense. 413 on third down, 2.6 yards per rush, 4.4 per pass, 3.5 per play. If they lose to the Panthers, which they should have, Patriots are going to be laying 3 points here. I just kind of feel that there's a value spot on New England. Patriots, they've just uncharacteristically bad on special teams. There was a play where they're going to punt it with 3 minutes left and someone lined up offsides. That led to Washington a first down, running more clock out. Mac Jones actually put the ball on Juju Smith-Schuster's hands. Juju dropped it, which led to the pick, which ended the game. But I really think the main thing in here is they ran for 5.6 yards per play on the ground. And there's no Glover Cleveland, who's one of the better run stoppers still for the Colts. I think New England's going to lay on the run here. I'll take the Patriots. I got them at 2. Anything like 1.5 is fine.
Yep, we're both on the Patriots side here. We continue on to the Browns at the Ravens. So the Ravens are the third team since the merger to beat 3 straight teams with a winning record by 24 plus points. They did not trail for one moment in any of the 3 games against the Browns, Lions, and the Seahawks. Third straight game where they've scored over 30 points. How crazy is this? Lamar is 18-1 versus NFC teams in his career. Just a crazy stat. The Ravens are now the number 1 team in DVOA. They have the number 4 offense, 11 pass offense, the number 1 rushing offense. They're the number 2 defense. They're number 2 defending the pass. They're number 3 defending the run. They ran for almost 300 yards, 7.3 yards per carry against Seattle. Mitchell didn't have a carry all year before this game. All of a sudden, 9 carries, 138 yards. He has a touchdown as well, 40-yard touchdown, a 60-yard run. He was actually the leading rusher of the week. I know that's a bet you make sometimes, who leads the league in rushing that week. That would have been a huge one for him if he was even on the board. They had 4 sacks to their league best total. They created 2 more turnovers. They're not really overwhelming you on the offensive skill positions, but they can run the ball. Their passing game has been more and more improved. OBJ had a really good game. They generated pressure on like 55% of Geno Smith's dropbacks. They've outscored their opponents by 115 points this year. No other team has outscored opponents by more than 80. They're allowing the fewest points per game in the league, second fewest yards in the league. They've held all 9 of their opponents to less than 25 points this year. They've given up 9 touchdowns in 9 games. But on the offensive line, the left tackle, Stanley, didn't have a great game. He missed the block, led to a strip sack. Things have gone really well for this team over the last few games. And Eric, just the way that this Browns defense is, and watching Watson look a little healthier last week, I'm not going to say Watson's back because it was Arizona. one of the worst defenses in the league, and maybe Watson's not going to look as good against the Ravens or others. He just did look a little healthier than he had the few weeks before, where obviously it was in his head that he wasn't right and he didn't want to go out there and play quarterback. And now, whether or not Watson's been as good as anyone that backed Cleveland had hoped or a Cleveland fan would have liked, he does still give them an upside that other guys don't give them. Even if he's not consistently the guy he used to be, he can still make plays here and there that PJ and DTR and some of the other options they had, they don't get from that. So I'm on the Brown side in here. I think this is going to be a divisional game. I think it's going to be tight. I think, Baltimore's become now the consensus best team in the league. Everybody's talking about them, how they are the best football team in the league by far, what they've done the last few weeks. I think it's going to inevitably, even out a little. And I think this is the week where it's probably a tight game, close one. I'm on the Brown side here, plus the 6.
Yeah, I say it all the time. NFL is about buying low, selling high. Teams have won by 28 points or more the previous week, such as the Ravens that are home favorites are 44% against the number. When the line is 3.5 or higher, that number drops down to 41% against the number. Also, the Ravens have won 4 in a row, have covered 4 in a row. Teams that have done that and are in their 5th game that are home favorites, 46% against the number. I know that these teams played all the way back in week 4, but DTR was a quarterback and he's not an NFL quarterback. So I'm throwing the offensive production that the Browns had out the window. But I'm going to look at the Ravens' production. Ravens only threw for 186 yards that game, and they didn't even have 300 yards in total offense. Their offense was put in great positions because of the DTR INTs. He had 3 of them that led to Ravens having short field and scoring points. The Browns have the best defense in the NFL, and it's not even close.
Plus 58 yards last week for Arizona, 58 total yards, forced 3 turnovers, 7 sacks. I mean, poor Arizona was overmatched that game, but this defense is legit. It was actually one of the 10 best games ever from a defense based on the DVOA metrics.
And this defense was built to stop Lamar Jackson. They have speed at the defensive end. They have speed at the linebacker position to not let a Lamar run, not let him extend plays. I think with Watson behind center and him not throwing the ball, which leads to turnovers, I think this Browns team will be able to keep it close. Now, also, let's just kind of think about the Browns. I really don't feel people truly understand how good this team is. They have the 9th worst turnover differential. Before playing the Cardinals last week, they had the 2nd worst turnover differential. They've been playing a 3rd-string quarterback who they signed off the Bears practice squad, who got beat out by Tyler Bagent to be their quarterback while Watson was hurt. Their best offensive lineman in Jack Conklin is out for the season. Their best offensive weapon for Nick Chubb is out for the season. And this team is 5-3, right in the middle of the playoff hunt. I really don't think people understand truly how good this team is. And if Watson can just put it together, this team is going to be a play on moving forward, especially with how easy their schedule gets to end the season. Jackson is a favorite. He's only 46% against the number. Home favorite drops down to 40.6. Home favorite of 3.5 or more drops down to 35.7%. He just doesn't cover as a big favorite. Now, this is also a stat. Since 2005, if you're just to blindly put $100 on every single divisional dog, okay, that was on the road, you'd be up over $5,000. I think the Browns have the defense. I think they'll make things tough for the Ravens. I'll take the Browns here plus the 6.
Both on the Browns side there. The game from Watson, he was graded quarterback number 4 on the week. He had 2 big-time throws. And one key, his completion percentage over expectation on passes of 10-plus air yards, plus 23%. He was terrible at that coming into week 9. So just something to monitor. If he can stretch the ball down the field a little bit more, that just gives them an option that we haven't really seen for them throughout a lot of the year. Packers at the Steelers. We have the Steelers as a 3.5 point favorite in this game, over under 39. Packers entered last week 26th, averaging 88.4 rushing yards per game. They ran all over the Rams. They had 184 and 4.8 yards per carry. They put the ball in Jones' hand. He had 73 yards rushing. He also had 4 catches for 26 yards. It's not as if the Packers looked fantastic. They had a couple penalties on 4th and short, which stopped them from extending drives. They missed a field goal, fumbled twice early in the second half. They had 8 penalties. Love missed some passes. He wasn't always sharp. Did have a nice 20-yard touchdown. And in the second half, he was much better. He also had a really good completion percentage over expectation. So he was 12 of 13 for 160 yards and a touchdown in the second half, and they shut the Rams out, only allowing 96 yards, did the Packers. The young players sort of stepped up for them defensively. 7th-round rookie corner played well. Rookie safety had an interception. Second-year edge rusher had a big tackle for loss. So lots of the young pieces they're going to need moving forward. They got some help from them. But, I mean, they were playing against a Rams team that just could not move the ball at all with Rypien at quarterback. They now play the Steelers. Pickett has thrown 6 touchdowns in 8 games. Last week, he didn't have any turnovers. They couldn't connect with the receivers early. He had a couple overthrows. There was a bad drop from Pickens. The Steelers beat the Titans, and in that game, Mike Tomlin's record now, rookie quarterbacks are 1-13 against Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. You just don't win there against Tomlin. Canada. Matt Canada was calling plays from the sideline for the first time in his career. They actually got the ball and went 80 yards on 10 plays on their opening drive. It was the first opening drive touchdown for the Steelers since week 15 of last year. They ran the ball pretty well. They had 6 rushes of 10-plus yards. This game was more about some misses from the quarterback, I thought, than it really was about the scheme. I don't really have too many issues with Canada in this particular game as I did with just some of the misses and some of the drops the players had here. Defense was a little shaky to start, Eric. They had 40 yards and penalties on the opening drive for the Titans. They did lock up a little bit. They had to play a quarterback making his second career start on a short week. They only allow 3 points in the second half, and they forced a turnover late in the game. They stopped Tennessee on all 3 fourth-quarter drives. They put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, 45% pressure rate. This stat I thought was an interesting one. They're the first team in NFL history to get outgained in each of their first 8 games and have a winning record. There have been 34 teams that have been outgained in each of their first 8 games. None of them, besides the Steelers, have ever had a winning record, as the Steelers sit at 5-3 here. But this is not a normal Steelers spot, right? When you're laying more than a field goal. Normally, we like to play the Steelers when they're getting some points and they're that home dog.
Yeah, I mean, you know the script here. You know, we fade Tomlin when he's a favorite. Tomlin is a favorite of 3 or more. He is 44.7% ATS off a win as a favorite. He's 39.5% ATS. I know people are going to say, what about the Steelers defense against the Packers, namely Jordan Love? I kind of feel the team, this isn't what we're used to seeing from the Steelers defense versus the run. Usually when Hayward is there, they have played really well. But when you just kind of look at it, they're 16th DVOA against the run when he's been playing, allowing 131.1 yards per game on the ground per teamrankings.com, which is the 4th worst in the league during that time frame. I think that LaFleur is starting to figure out that, hey, I have Aaron Jones. If I give it to Aaron Jones, good things happen. I expect the Packers to lean on Jones and Dillon, cover the 3.5. LaFleur 67% ATS. Also, trivia question. There has been one team that has been outgained in every single game this season. Time to guess who it is?
That was the Steelers.
The Steelers. Yep. Outgained.
Yeah. And they were the first. Yeah, they're the first one that's ever had a winning record through the 8 games after the getting outgained in each one. Because that just doesn't happen. You're not going to be winning games when you're getting outgained every single time. So Tomlin finds a way to win all these close games. They figure it out. But not a spot like this where you're getting margin. So Eric and I both kind of leaning on the Packers. Eric already got that one down as we move to the next game. I locked this one in, Eric, and it's already moved in a positive direction for me. I played Texans plus the 7 in here. Both of these teams are a little buzzy coming off of last week, but the Bengals in particular, over the last few weeks now, everyone's just sort of kind of penciled them back in as a Super Bowl contender, and they've looked good. They had 21 points and 214 total yards in the first half last week against the Bills, and then they were able to coast. Burrow torched the Niners a couple of weeks ago. He was 28 of 32 with 3 touchdowns. Against Buffalo, he goes for 348 yards and 2 touchdowns. And it could have been more because Chase and Higgins both dropped what should have been touchdowns on really nice passes. He couldn't really connect with Chase, so he connected with 7 different receivers that had at least 3 catches. They got the tight ends involved. They combined 3 different tight ends, 10 catches, 101 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The defense is now starting to get a little bit better too. They're well coached, so they just make some adjustments, Eric. Sometimes they don't look fantastic on some of the metrics. Like they were 27th in yards allowed coming into week 9, but now they're number 11 in defensive DVOA. They're number 10 against the pass. They make adjustments. They make big plays. They make stops throughout games when they need. Against Buffalo, there were 4 straight possessions when the Bills didn't run more than 5 plays. And the first 3 of those possessions, the Bills got 0 yards. And they've now allowed 20 points or less in 4 straight games. They actually allowed 20 points against Arizona and then gave up less to Seattle, San Francisco, and Buffalo that all scored 18 or less. They blitzed on only 7% of dropbacks, which was their second lowest in a game over the last 6 years, and they were still able to get pressure. And Burrow is leading the league in all of these categories since week 5. They're 4-0. He has a 75.8 completion percentage, 10 passing touchdowns, and a passer rating of 111.2. All positives, all great. I think because of that, they're just a little overvalued in this game. And what I at least like about the Texans and what I locked them in at plus the 7, they can score. We've seen them be able to go up and down. Stroud just finishes with 470 yards, 5 touchdowns, graded quarterback number 2 on the week, only behind Joe Burrow. Just incredible. I mean, he had 22 passing first downs in that game. They had 364 total yards in the second half alone. And 3 different receivers, Dell, Schultz, and Brown, all had 100 yards. It was the first time in franchise history that has happened. And this team is 4-4 after going 3-13-1 last year. So coaching staff's done a fantastic job. They were down 10 in the second quarter. Looked like they were going to probably lose this game. They go on a nice scoring drive. Then their kicker gets hurt. They had to have a running back kick a 29-yard field goal, Eric, with less than 9 minutes to go in the game. First time since 2004 a non-kicker or punter hits a field goal. And this was a fun game with the Texans and the Bucks. There was 6 different lead changes and a couple in the final moment. But I think with the number at 7, that was where I locked in the Texans. I would not necessarily going to line up and bet it here, but I think they've got enough of an offense that they can stay close in this game and they can be ripe for some backdoor.
Yeah, I really didn't know what to do with this game. Like I look at a lot of situational stuff, a lot of the trends, a lot of what people do home and away. Look, the Bengals, just a big win over the Bills. They play the Texans now. They have the Ravens on deck. Perfect situational spot to fade them. Flip side, that Texans-Bucks game was wild. It was crazy. I mean, look, I know one of the terms that gets thrown around a lot that's really starting to agitate me is like bad beat. I mean, it's like anytime someone loses a bet right now, it's a bad beat. Whoever lost that game, I mean, you could argue as a bad beat just because everything kind of got skewed as soon as the kicker went out because the Texans were going for stuff. They wouldn't normally be going for stuff. They couldn't kick stuff when they normally, you know what I mean? So it was just a weird, funky game. But the thing that really stood out to me is I kind of centered in on CJ Stroud splits home and on the road. When he's at home, he averages 339 yards per game, 9.3 yards per pass completion. He has 11 touchdowns and he has a 113 quarterback ranking. But then I looked at what he's done on the road. That dips down to 227.8 yards per game, only 6.8 yards per pass completion, only has 3 TDs on the road, and his QB ranking drops down to 90.8. Doesn't really seem to play well away from the place. Chase banged up. We don't even know, he didn't practice today. T. Higgins didn't practice today. Texans 26 DVOA defending the pass. So obviously, Chase and Higgins not being there is going to help, because that de facto makes Tyler Boyd their number one. I don't know. I can make arguments to bet both teams here. Just because of that, I'm just going to kind of stay away from it. And also it's under this number opened up at 7.5, 8, kind of, you missed the value right now sitting at 6.5.
Yep. I was just going to say, if you didn't get it before and you like the Texans, you should wait now, because 7 was the point where I was going to jump in, and nothing less than that one. We get to Saints at the Vikings. So the Saints are a 2.5 point favorite on the road in this game. They come off a game where they didn't really do much. They had 300 total yards, 4.9 yards per play, only 18 first downs. They benefited from 5 turnovers. And it was actually the first time since week 5 where they didn't turn the ball over. They also only committed 1 penalty. They didn't allow a sack, and they got Taysom Hill involved. They were able to make some adjustments later in the game. The Bears had 250 yards and 14 points in the first half, and New Orleans only scored 24, largely because of a weird 4th and inches sneak, a missed field goal, and a passing game that's just not been exciting. Then on the Vikings side, Jaren Hall starts. He gets hit really hard. He has to come out of the game. And then the legend of Josh Dobbs begins. This guy immediately looks terrible. He gets strip sacked. He gets sacked for a safety. He gives up 5 points right away to Atlanta. Then he fumbles again on the first drive in the second half. Following that up, he starts making some huge plays. Ends up leading the team in rushing with 66 yards rushing on 7 carries. This is his 5th different team, his 6th different transaction in 1 calendar year. And the guy's a rocket scientist. So he's like an actual genius. He can process information incredibly quick. There are these stories that the coach has been telling from the Vikings. He's actually having to explain the plays to him over the headset right before he's about to go run the play. And it's pretty crazy to me that he doesn't have, like, when watching the film back, there's not a bunch of like errant throws either, where him and the receiver just were off base. He fumbled the ball a few times, but he didn't have a bunch of those where it's like, oh, the receiver goes left and he goes right. It was almost like you get reminded of what's going to happen right before that. You're almost a little sharper. Oh, hey, this guy's going to run a 20-yard post or whatever whatever the play is, and he gets it like spoon fed to him. But just incredible. The shots of him on the sideline, he'd never taken a snap with the center. So he'd never had an exchange with the center before. And the guys on the Vikings didn't know his voice. They didn't know his cadences when he was going to call plays. So they're all just standing around on the sidelines while they're getting used to his voice. And he's talking to the center, and the center's doing the exchange with him. It was like something out of The Replacements, to make a movie, that it didn't even seem real. And if you're Arthur Smith and you lose that game, I mean, that's just bad. Nonetheless, the Vikings are now 5-4, and he helps lead this team to score 31 points, and he was part of 3 touchdowns himself. And now they're a home dog in here. I mean, I don't know. I can't lay points right now with the Saints on the road, Eric. Even in a situation like this, the Vikings have been like a little feisty this year, and I just have not been impressed with the Saints. To me, this is a Vikings or nothing.
Yeah, this is a nothing for me. I mean, like, if this would get down to like a pick, maybe I'd play like the Saints on the money line, but I'm not a big proponent of laying points on the road. If it's a money line pick, then I'll do it. Dobbs in his career, he has 10 starts. He's 1 and 9 straight up. You look at Allen on the other side, 38.3% ATS is on the road, 26.3% ATS as a favorite. Look, Dobbs played well, but I really think there was a key point in that game where the Falcons kind of had a chance to step on their throats and make it a pretty big lead. They had the ball. It was 1st and 5 at the Falcons 5-yard line. Pass to Jonnu Smith in the flat, got down to the 1. 2nd and 1 from the 1. Do you give it to Bijan Robinson? No. Do you give it to Tyler Algier? No. You run a handoff play for Jonnu Smith.
I know. It's just I've been so disappointed with Arthur Smith this year, man. So disappointed.
I mean, if they score that 3 there, that game in my eyes, that was
game
right.
It's over.
I mean, like, there's just insurmountable. The floodgates open once Dobbs went in. One thing, though, that Dobbs has done historically is he does target the tight end. You can probably you should use TJ Hawkinson here in pretty much every single DFS lineup. That's one thing that he's done. I know everything's being made about how smart he is, how he's a rocket scientist. However, he does the same thing every time. He goes back and he runs to his right.
He's very, you know what he's going to do.
He does the same thing. I mean, the routes will be different and everything. So look, I'll sit this one out. I'll play Hawk and some DFS stuff. But other than that, there's nothing for me here.
Yeah, I would need the +3 to jump in on the Vikings for me. If it was 3, I would go Vikings. Otherwise, I kind of steer clear. Like I said, I definitely am not laying it with the Saints on the road. We have a couple teams coming off a bye, 49ers and the Jags. 49ers on the road here, coming off of 3 straight losses for them now. And they are a 3-point favorite at Jacksonville. Eric, with these two teams coming off the bye, these are two teams that you and I coming into the year and sort of all year haven't been as high on as everyone else. In this situation, are you just taking the home dog? Because of that, you're getting a field goal with the home dog. Both of these teams you weren't quite as high on, or are you specifically, is there specific handicaps you have about this game? Dive into 49ers Jags.
Neither of these coaches historically are good off the bye. I know the DVOA has the Jags high, but with the pass funnel system that they run, they can be run on. So I really think the 49ers have the potential to move the ball, but we don't know. Trent Williams didn't practice today. Debo is out there. And the one thing that has been shown this year is for this 49ers offense to click, they need all those weapons. Purdy has a concussion. He didn't look right that last game he played. I was a little shocked he was able to play.
I know that was pretty quick turnaround.
How is he going to look here? Is he going to look okay? Because I really don't like this Jags defense. Like I said, I know DVOA has them high, but I think they can give up some weapons. When the Jags played the Saints, they only had 29 yards of total offense in the second half. And then there was that broken play to Kirk, which is a false start that shouldn't have counted, but of course the false start wasn't called. Are they going to be able to move the ball against this 49ers defense, which now is Chase Young, which now is Bosa, which now is Armstead, which now has Randy Gregory? You know what I mean? Are they going to be able to move the ball? Is the Jags offensive line, which has struggled this season, going to be able to protect against those vaunted pass rushers? Also, Lawrence hasn't looked good this year. I know it's a little distorted because everyone looks at their record, but when you look at the numbers, he has not looked good. He has not looked like this generational Andrew Luck type talent that was going to transcend the game. This is a game I literally want nothing to do with. I'm literally going to have no DFS players. It probably won't even make the screen for me in my house right now. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, crazy. I'm not laying it with the 49ers. I would be more on the Jag side, but this is not one of my plays either here. As we get to Titans and the Bucks, this one's basically a pick 'em here. Tennessee at Tampa. Tampa has 4 consecutive losses. The offense was very good in Houston last week, but the defense allows 496 yards and 39 points, including a game-winning drive of 75 yards in 40 seconds. It's every week for the last month for them, one side of the ball they've been good, or one of their units has been good, and the other's been bad. They just haven't been able to sort of figure it out because there have been games where Baker and their offense looks good, and then their defense lets them down. Then a couple of the games where their offense has struggled, their defense has played really well. They were able to get White more involved last week. 20 carries, 73 yards. He also had 4 catches for 46 yards. At halftime, he had 43% of their total yards. But, they probably aren't feeling great about where they are right now after the good start to the season. Now, on the flip side, you have the Titans. I think Will Levis has played pretty well in his couple games so far, and just the level of quarterback play the Titans were getting from Tannehill wasn't fantastic, and from anything other than Tannehill, it wasn't good at all. And at least he can throw the ball down the field. He's played 6 pretty good quarters of football. Struggled late against a good defense in a tough place to play in Pittsburgh. They still only lost the game by 4. And when you watch the game, he struggled in spots that made sense. Like the red zone, they were only 1 of 4. On third down, they were 3 of 13 as a team. This team's banged up, though. They're already, obviously, without their starting quarterback. They lost wide receiver Burks. It was carted off the field. Right tackle banged up. His replacement left the game. Rookie left guard got banged up. Then the left tackle missed a few plays. His leg got rolled up on. They had 1 starting offensive lineman play every snap in the game. Even a cornerback, Murphy Bunting, left with injury in the first quarter. So this one, to me, was one of the stay away games, Eric, where I just didn't really have a strong opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Vrabel 10-1 coming off 10-1 ATS coming off extended rest, which is 10 days or more. Vrabel as a dog is 60% ATS, but when he's getting 2.5 points or less as a dog, he's 40% ATS. And this is the one that kind of stuck out to me. When it's 2 or less, he has never covered a game. He has never covered a game when he's getting 2 points. Titans 24th DVOA defending the pass, 30th DVOA defending wide receiver ones. Look, Deontay Johnson 7 for 90. Last game, Mike Evans 82 yards last week against the Texans. He had 60 yards called back on penalties, which is absolutely absurd. He could have had 140 yards. To me, this game, as you play Mike Evans props, his receiving yards will probably be in the low 60s, 62, 63. Play Mike Evans over just because Baker goes to him. Titans can't defend the pass. That's the only thing I want to do in this game.
We get to Falcons at the Cardinals. Falcons are a slight favorite on the road in this game. Looks like Kyler Murray will be coming back. Good thing, because the Arizona Cardinals had 58 total yards last week. Clayton Tune was under pressure 17 times. He was 1 for 7 for 1 yard when under pressure. He was sacked 7 times, pressured on 56% of his dropbacks, and only 12 of those were actual blitzes. About half of the plays went for 0 or negative yards. You were 1 of 12 on third down, and it was a 3rd and 1 when they were down by 27, where they actually picked it up. They had 3 turnovers in that game. Over the last 6 weeks, they've lost by double digits 5 times, and they're hoping to get Kyler Murray back. So they were 1-8, and they had started more quarterbacks than they had wins without Kyler Murray. They end up getting rid of Dobbs, and they let Dobbs go to Minnesota. This is basically like, do we want to bring Kyler Murray back? They're going to see what it's going to be like for him for the next part of the year, but he hasn't played in a while. It's not as if this team is good, Eric. I really don't know what to do here with this spot. This one's sort of weird, especially because on the flip side, God, it feels like Arthur Smith is done, or he doesn't have much left over there with how he's just, things aren't going well for him, and he's not sounding good at the press conferences. Like, he's sounding like he's frustrated.
Yeah, I guess he had a 5-minute explanation on the podium today about why John was putting it.
It's just, he's getting too cute. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, it's like he thinks there's a rivalry with him and the reporters, who people are just asking him, why aren't you giving your playmakers and it's a separate conversation, right? You said this as a Lions fan, man, I wish they wouldn't have spent that high of capital on Gibbs. I wish they would have gone and gotten a defensive lineman, someone on the edge, right? Yeah. But because they did, you you hope at least in some spots they're going to try to use Gibbs. There have been games when they needed Gibbs and they got him more involved. It's like he's stubborn about not wanting to use Bijan and Pitts and those guys.
Yeah, Matthew Berry tweeted this out. Bijan has 25 touches in his last 3 games, 2 or fewer receptions in 3 straight. Algier has outtouched Bijan 26-12 in the red zone this year, which is inexcusable in my eyes. I went on this whole rant on my live stream Tuesday night, how he needs to go. They're 4-5. They should be 7-2, at worst 6-3.
Absolutely.
The window to win in the NFL is so small, and the NFC right now is insanely open. The 49ers, they're banged up. Trent Williams, Debo, Brock Purdy. I know they made some great additions on the defensive side of the ball, but their best wide receiver in Debo, their starting quarterback, and their best offensive lineman are all banged up. Hurts has something going on with his knee. So there's an opportunity there for a wild card team to come out of the NFC and make a run. And he's absolutely blowing it. I don't understand this Jonnu Smith. Why are we giving the ball to Jonnu Smith? I don't understand not going to Kyle Pitts more.
It's just like a stubborn thing. He's like one of those.
You're supposed to be this.
He's like a Moneyball coach, right? He's like a guy who does well with nothing, but then you give him actual playmakers and he doesn't know what to do with them.
And I mean, you're supposed to be this offensive genius. Where is the development of Ritter? You know what I mean? There's no development. There is no player development. We give the Bears staff shit with what they did with Fields and Trubisky. No development from Ritter.
Nice.
Tyler Heinicke, he ain't it. You should have came up with a better backup plan than Tyler Heinicke. They're just letting this slip away. In terms of this game, look, we don't know how rusty Kyler Murray is going to be, but we've seen it with Deshaun Watson when he came back, or other quarterbacks from extended rest. They don't look sharp that first game back. What are we going to see from Kyler Murray? They also designated James Conner to come back. This offense was pretty good for the Cards until Conner got hurt. When Conner got hurt, it started to go downhill. What is the mental motivation for the Falcons? Is this going to be like the Raiders team that just hates their coach, that hated being for them, playing for him? As soon as he left, they started playing better. Card defense has been putrid. Are they going to be able to get stops? We just ripped Arthur Smith, but if the Cards can't get any stops because their defense is so poor, is it really going to matter? Falcons, they do struggle against mobile quarterbacks. They struggled against Sam Howell. They struggled against Josh Dobbs. If Kyler's out there running, are they going to be able to keep him keep him in the pocket? PFF is all over the Falcons in the trenches. They say the Falcons have an insane advantage. Offensive run blocking, offensive pass blocking. I really want nothing to do with this game, though. Honestly, I literally want nothing to do.
Me too.
Game.
I agree.
Stay away from me.
This one's a stay away as we move to your Lions and the Chargers. Lions are a 3-point favorite on the road against the Chargers. Lions coming off a bye, and the Chargers come off a win where they only had 191 yards of total offense. They scored 2 rushing touchdowns at the goal line. And other than that, they didn't really move the ball on the ground. Keenan Allen avoided Gardner for a lot of the night. He was in the slot. They were all over Zach Wilson. Chargers had 8 sacks. So their defense actually looked a lot better. They had 3 fumbles, and now they're 4-4. And what was nice is that it was a little bit of the Staley stuff, right? It was some defensive adjustments that we saw. He paired Mack with another edge rusher, Tui Pelotu from USC, and now USC's rookie was much, much more impactful here, just sort of the way that he set things up. They had one-on-one blocking scenarios that were just a little bit better. Sebastian Joseph Day, you could just see Staley doing some things defensively that made sense and that worked out well. So I took positive out of that, but this one to me is like a Chargers plus the field goal or nothing. I'm probably staying away, though. I just do not have the strongest opinion in the world. I expect the Lions to play well in here coming off the bye, but it still does feel weird to see the Lions favored by a field goal-ish on the road against a team like the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Charger spot to me. This line keeps on going up. I'm hoping to get a 3.5. Look, I know the Lions, this is probably going to be the most healthiest they've been in a while. They're getting Jonah Jackson, Frank Rauno, their offensive center looks like he's going to be a go. David Montgomery, which is actually huge to their running game, is supposed to be back. Shockingly, Staley, 64% ATS as a fade, as a favorite, as a dog, excuse me. But one thing we need to keep in mind, I know, look, everyone's hyping the Lions, but who have they really played? I mean, they beat the Chiefs week 1. What can you really take away from that? You know, because that was the first game. Chiefs are getting their rings. So you can't really put, in my eyes, too much stock in that game because the Chiefs have changed dramatically to what they were then to what they are now. The two highest teams that they've played DVOA-wise were the Seahawks, who are 16th. They lost to them at home, and then they got boat raced by the Ravens. So I really feel that the Chargers are a little bit more battle-tested. They have gone toe-to-toe with the Dolphins, the Chiefs, Jets defense, 196. Jets defense is good. But they did enough to win that game. You met the adjustment that they made with Mac on the defensive line. I want to take the Chargers here. I just needed to get to 3.5. Important to remember, Lions do struggle covering the slot. That's where Keenan Allen runs over 70% of his routes. I expect a huge game from them. A little bit of a bounce back from Herbert, even though he didn't look too hot. And if the Chargers, we always kind of look for teams that can kind of like, quote unquote, make a run if they get through a hiccup of their schedule. This is kind of the hiccup part of the Chargers schedule. I kind of feel if they can get through this game, this could be the kind of game they could kind of make a run. Because, I mean, they got this game, then they have the Packers, then they have the Ravens, and then after that, it's the Patriots, Broncos, Raiders, the Bills, and the Broncos, and then the Chiefs. So they have some winnable games. If they can get through this game, I think they're going to be in good shape to kind of make the playoffs, just because I think this is a winnable game for them.
Yeah, I'm on the Chargers side too. We'll see if you can get a little bit better number, if we can get this up to 3.5. I know you're laying 16.5 with the Cowboys here against Tommy DeVito and the Giants. So Dallas, coming off of another Dallas type game where every time they play a really good opponent, and you need to see from Dallas if they are, able to step up to the next level, they prove they're not. They had a 1st and goal on the 6-yard line. They go full start. Then they have a bad sack, and then they throw a rushed incomplete pass and a delay of game. And they had 7 more first downs in the game. They had 110 more total yards, more yards per play. They ran more total plays. They went 3 of 5 in the red zone. The Eagles went 3 of 3. They also missed on a 2-point conversion where Dak steps out of bounds. So that would have put them in position to only need a field goal late instead of needing a touchdown. It's like all these little things. And,
to me, that was the game.
Right? Just the difference in knowing that you don't have to go all the way down and kick and score a touchdown there.
No.
How crazy is they had 3 scoreless drives that ended inside the Philly 30-yard line. Got 0 points out of 3 different drives. I heard this stat before the Eagles game, because this happened in the Eagles game. The Dallas Cowboys did not have 1 lead change in any of their games so far this year. In their for the first 8 weeks of the year, every game they would just get up by 20 and crush, or they would get down big and then never come back. You just knew what was going to happen. No lead changes as any game until recently. Man, like, it's just, is this number too big now with DeVito? Like, he threw interceptions on consecutive pass attempts in the second quarter. They lose to the Raiders, who are starting O'Connell. He gets sacked 6 times. I mean, just every line, there's a buy-in point at some point. Is this the point where you buy in, or talk to us about this game?
It's DeVito. There's no buy-in point for me in this game.
That's
I can't. Look, it's a double-digit divisional dog. This is has me written all over it. But I'm not going to force a bet when we have a quarterback starting the league that should not be starting. Look, Giants have offensive line injuries, which is huge when you're going up with this defensive front that the Cowboys are bringing. Is this a letdown spot for the Cowboys after losing to the Eagles? I don't think so. If they would have won that game, yeah, this big number I definitely would be laying. But look, I could sit here and rattle off all these stats, but at the end of the day, you have DeVito starting. This is their third string quarterback starting against a top 5 defense in the league on the road in Dallas.
And this is the type of game where Dallas beats up on these teams.
Yeah. When you have an offensive line with a lot of injuries, there's no way I want to touch this game.
No, can't do it. We go to Washington at Seattle. Seattle is coming off of a bad stretch of play for Geno Smith, but they're still 5-3 and still tied for first in the division. Smith has 3 consecutive games with multiple turnovers. He's now thrown an interception in 4 straight games and 13 of them in his last 15. They couldn't run the ball at all, Seattle, against the Ravens, so they became super one-dimensional. They only had 1.8 yards per carry on 9 attempts for Walker. His best run was called back by a penalty. They had 6 first downs in the game. They went 1 of 12 on third down, only 151 total yards, and the Ravens had 515. The Seahawks had 1 drive that went farther than 50 yards and 8 drives that didn't go farther than 11. To me, this number is just too big. I for some reason all year, I think Seattle's just been a little bit overvalued on the betting lines just because the rest of the NFC is not that strong. But the thing about Washington that we know, they're going to throw the ball, and they're not going to stop throwing the ball, Eric. Howell has dropped back 48 more times than any quarterback in the league. He actually leads the NFL in big-time throws, but he's taken 15 more sacks than any quarterback in the league. They call him Sam Sack Howell. He's on pace to break the all-time record for dropbacks, which Tom Brady had. He's had back-to-back games now with over 300 yards passing. I was reading through an article, and they said, one of the quotes said, Eric Bieniemy is just pretending that he's got Patrick Mahomes, and I'm all for it here. He's just letting Sammy Howell drop back, throw it as many times as possible. They pick up a win last week against the Patriots, and their defense looks different now because they don't have Sweat. They don't have Young. They're not as overwhelming, but they didn't give up a ton of big plays. They allowed 164-yard run, and other than that, the longest play they gave up went for 20 yards. I just think it's a good spot for Washington. I think this number is a little too big here, so I'm on the Washington side.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm just not high on either one of these teams. I really feel that the Patriots should have beat the Commanders. I mean, Juju dropped that ball. There was that dumb special teams turnover that extended the Commanders' drive. Seattle's D line got better with the addition of Williams. DBs are good. Offensive line struggling. Geno Smith, you mentioned the struggles. Can you really trust Geno to win with this margin? Look, I know Rivera is 58% ATS as a dog, but when you take out when he was with Carolina and Cam Newton, that number goes down a lot. To me, I really think the thing that stood out to me was the Commanders with no Sweat, no Young, are going to struggle stopping the run. We saw Stevenson break out that big run. To me, the only thing I want to do in this game is I'll take Kenneth Walker in terms of DFS. Maybe if you can get plus 200 for him to rush for 100 yards, I'll look to play that. But in terms of side or total, this is another one of those games where I really don't want anything to do with it.
Already locked in the Raiders on the money line for this next game. I played them a little earlier, and they were plus money on the Raiders. And it's basically like a pick 'em with the Jets playing in Vegas. I love what I saw from the Raiders coming off that fired coach bump. Eric, some of the stories we're hearing about McDaniels, I'm sure you've heard some of them. The one that everyone's been talking about where the team is like airing it all out. They're sort of ripping on McDaniels. Everyone's getting really upset. And then Pierce comes in and he's the assistant coach and he's like rallies the troops. He tells them, we were on the Giants team and we weren't as good as the Patriots, but we had this chip on our shoulder and we thought we could beat them and we rallied around it and we beat that undefeated Patriots team. And like a lot of the guys on the team are starting to believe, they're starting to get, okay, cool, we're going to get it and good. I like this. So the team gets all excited. At least they start to believe. And when the team leaves, McDaniels sits there and he talks with some of the other coaches and he tells Pierce, don't you ever talk bad about that Patriots team. That's what he said. Like coming out of that conversation, the guy's so out of touch that he didn't even thank a dude for possibly saving his back. And I think that was the final straw for like Davis and some of them where they're like, this guy's that far out of touch with reality that he's more concerned with somebody talking bad about his beloved Patriots team from years ago than getting this group of guys in the locker room to believe in you and to trust you and to care about you. He's just a terrible people person from everything that's been read and just not someone that should be a head coach. We see a lot of guys like this, Eric, where they're good coordinators or they're good coaches. They belong on a coaching staff in the NFL, but they shouldn't be leading a team. And he had the chance now with two different teams where he just blew it. I mean, he had really bad coaching tenures. Years later, it wasn't like he learned anything from his first experience. And when it's that bad, I think there's something to be said for a team just getting rid of that and getting rid of that energy and feeling like they can just go out there and play football. Man, O'Connell looked a lot better last week. The defense looked better. They just looked more inspired. And I don't think this should be a situation where the Jets should be favored or this should be close here. I still don't think on the road the Jets are a team that should be, getting some sort of margin here at all. And it's basically a pick 'em, but it was a +1.5 a little earlier. I like the Raiders in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna wait. I'll see, kind of what happens after that. And it's kind of funny. That's not really funny, but Arizona State can't play in a bowl game. They have some NCAA stuff going on. The reason why they have NCAA stuff going on, Antonio Pierce. You know what I mean? So all these people, this is like a tangent, but say that Harbaugh is going to be out of coaching. Harbaugh's a way better coach, the guy from Michigan, than Pierce. So even if this Michigan stuff blows up, he's going to be in the NFL. I mean, if Pierce can destruct the Arizona State program and then get a job, he'll be in it. In terms of this game, look, I know Zach Wilson gets a lot of crud, okay, but there was a lot of drat passes, and I usually don't watch the Manning cast, but I just got it there just by accident because I just wanted to kind of see what it was like.
I will say though, Peyton and Eli are smart. They're not bad. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff that's
I just don't like. I feel there should be a host. I feel like those two going back and forth.
Sure, I agree.
I feel there should be like
someone to. Yeah, that's a good. That's a good call. I agree.
Kind of quarterback it a little bit, but Payne made this point. He said that with Wilson in, there's no audibling. Whatever is called. It's just run. There's no changing, and it's Nate Hackett calling the plays. Yeah. You know what I mean?
So that combination of Wilson and Hackett.
And, you kind of look at this game and you got a couple ways you can think about it. Do we fade the Raiders after they just acted like they won the Super Bowl, beating the Giants, who didn't even have Daniel Jones because he went out and it was Danny DeVito back there playing quarterback? They're playing this Jets team. Now everyone's are going to say, well, what about the Jets defense? How are the Raiders going to be able to move the ball? Jets are 21 DVOA against the run. They allow 138.7 yards per game, 122 yards per game their last three.
It was the
So this could
Jacobs
be a
first
heavy
game.
Josh
They had
Jacobs
100
game.
yards last week too.
Where they could just turn around, hand it off to Jacobs, open stuff up. And on the flip side of that, Raiders struggle defending the run. They're 29th DVOA, allowing 138.2 yards, 138.2 yards per game, and won 12 their last 3. But are the Jets going to give the ball to Breece Hall? He is only averaging 11.75 carries per game, which is absolutely insane. And then think about no Aaron Rodgers there. That insane factor is now doubled. Why isn't he getting more carries per game? And how are the Jets in all these goddamn primetime games too with this putrid offense? You know what I mean? I was thinking about that too.
There's
But
a couple
in terms
bad
of
ones coming up. Yeah.
I mean, is O'Connell not going to turn over the ball? This defense did limit the Chargers, which has some weapons. I don't know what to do here. You know what I mean? Like, I honestly have no idea what to do. Maybe I'll look at some Josh Jacobs props, but that would be it. Because that's, to me, that's the only path the Raiders have, is to get the run game going with Jacobs, because I don't trust O'Connor to be able to make the passes. The second flip side with the Jets, do you trust Zach Wilson? Do you trust Nate Hackett?
Now, they had more first downs, total yards,
Yeah.
yards per play, won the time of possession by 9 minutes, 3 turnovers, 8 penalties, and they're 3 of 17 on third down.
And like Tyler Conklin dropped a pass. I mean, there is some, and I was on the Jets Monday night plus the points. I mean, there is some weird stat. I have it written down. You're gonna have to bear with me when I try to find it. But it was like something, like they did something that has never been done before with that loss. It was something like 5 turnovers, 20, and to lose by 20 points. It was absolutely insane, the stat. But I don't know. End of the day, I probably won't bet this.
Monday Night Football, Broncos at the Bills. And gosh, I mean, you have a Bills team that's now 5-4, and they just have a really tough time getting started right now. They scored 7 points going into the fourth quarter against the Jags and the Giants. On Sunday night, they had 10 points with 5 minutes left to go in the game. Opening drive, they go 85 yards, and then they get 37 yards the rest of the half. They are banged up, and, now they're turning the ball over. They can't run the ball outside of Josh Allen. They don't have those weapons after kind of like their Diggs, and now Kincaid's okay, but they don't really have like that next number 2 quite yet. Sort of a lot of inconsistency there. Von Miller looks done or very hurt. He only has 5 pressures on 76 rushes this year. So with Milano, they had a 40.5% passing success rate allowed. Which was 5th, and they were 2nd in EPA per play allowed. Without Milano, they're 31st in passing success rate allowed, and they're 28th in EPA per play allowed. And I'm not saying it's just him, but he's sort of the center of that defense, and now you all of a sudden have 3 or 4 pieces. Villar's not giving you anything that you were expecting at all. And, their defense led the league in takeaways after week 4. Since then, they have 3, and they have 0 in the last 2 games. So, just add all those things up. They're not getting takeaways. Their defense is undermanned. They can't really run the ball, and they don't have that many great weapons outside of Diggs. So overall, they're not a fantastic football team right now, Eric. And my whole thing is I just don't think they should be laying more than a touchdown in a situation like this. This to me is prime for a backdoor for a Denver team coming off a bye here that maybe could have figured some things out a little bit. So I'm on the Denver side here. Definitely not laying it with Buffalo.
Real quick, I found the thing. Jets are the only team in the NFL Super Bowl era to have their defense collect 5+ sacks, hold an opponent to under 200 yards, not allow any 25-yard plays, and yet lose a game by 20+ points. I mean, that's absolutely remarkable.
I agree.
So, in terms of this game, the main thing I really want to see is I want to see what the Broncos are going to do with Javonte Williams. Javonte really kind of looked what I thought he'd look like last week. Sorry, 2 weeks ago against the Chiefs. You know, Burst finally looked like he was back from that ACL injury. Are they going to continue to run him? Because you mentioned how the defense has struggled with no Milano there. We made a lot to do about the Broncos defense, and people are going to remember them allowing 70 points. Well, if you just look at the last 3 weeks, they're averaging giving up 15 points per game to the opposing offense.
And the Chiefs have been
pretty good. The 2 games are against the Chiefs. 2 of the 3 are against the Chiefs. You know, look, Bill's defense is struggling without Milano. This Broncos defense, you know, it can be thrown on with a tight end with Joseph playing it. But then you look at it, Allen historically, you know, laying 7.5 or more, he's 64% against the number. Wilson, 63.6% ATS as a dog with the Broncos. 7 is a lot, but why hasn't this number moved? You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of been sitting at 7 now for a while. Why hasn't, you know what I mean? Like, why hasn't this number moved down to 7? That's the only thing that I find a little bit weird with it. If I bet it, I'll probably be on the Broncos, but right now I'm just kind of laying back.
There's a look at NFL Week 10. So this week, Eric will be going to visit family and heading out of town. So what we're going to do on Friday, I don't think we're even going to have a show. I was talking to Jack this week. I think we're just going to have off. Sunday, Chase is going to join me for NFL Betting Blitz. So Sunday morning at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time, Chase will join for Eric and we'll go through all of the Sunday and Monday games. And then next week we'll be back to our normal schedule where we'll have Wednesday Eric recording with me for the podcast, Friday for the winning ticket, Sunday for NFL Betting Blitz. Eric, are you going to post your podcast out this week?
Yeah, my podcast should come out insanely early Friday morning before I leave to go back. My stream came out Tuesday, where, you know, me and Brandon, who's a professional iRacer, we both give out our top 3 bets for the weekend.
We'll be giving you a follow at ETOF21 on Twitter. Thanks so much, buddy. I hope you have a fun, safe weekend and enjoy the time with your family. And we'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds good, my friend.
Thanks so much. If you're listening on the podcast, still a lot more to come. If you're watching on social media on the videos, make sure to give Eric a follow and make sure to subscribe to That's What G Said podcast anywhere you get your podcast.